First off, I'd like to start with a land acknowledgement. I'm here on the land of the Musqueam people who have always lived, worked, played, and fished here. And this land was never given away to settlers. And I hope someday, through better listening and more cooperation from us, we can walk the path of right relations. So I did a whole bunch of things that never really added up to a career path. But like a lot of bright children, I needed to have done all those interconnected and disconnected things to do the job I do today. I studied sciences. I did English extra composition classes just for fun. I thought maybe I wanted to be a doctor, so I was an anatomy major at university. Almost got into med school after 1 year of undergrad. And then I spent a summer working at our GP's office. And I realized while it was knowledge I wanted, it was not a job I wanted. So I kind of fuffed around for about 5 years. And I learned how to produce and host television shows. I took extra classes in chemistry and maths and computer science and languages. And finally, around the end of my 20s, I lost a job that had been a summer job that kept getting extended for 1.5 years. When they made it permanent, it was going to pay enough they thought a man should have it. And I was devastated and demoralized. But I thought, you know, I've always wanted to do a science TV series. So I started working my contacts that I knew from working in a PR office at a big research facility. And through that, got an interview with someone who worked at a TV station. And they said, you know what? Send this story list to the head of our production department, but also email the head of the news department. Nothing came back. Nothing came back. Did my follow-up calls 3 months later. And the news director said, oh yeah, we've been meaning to give you a call. Let's do a job interview. Did that, heard nothing. 3 months later, did my follow-up calls, and the news director said, oh yeah, we've been meaning to get you to do a story. Give me 3 story ideas in an hour. Did that, did my first story with them, which was food irradiation. And from that has come a career as a science broadcaster. I was one of the first 3 in the country, and we had to make it up as we went. SciComm, science communications, didn't exist. Plain language as a specialty didn't exist, but we did it. I did it. Eve Savory did it. Dave Mowbray. And from that has come a whole career translating science into ordinary English, making it relevant. So I basically get paid to learn for a living and then turn around and tell people what I've learned and how it matters to them. I saw a little note in the UBC reports that used to be mailed out about all UBC news that there would be a conference for women in science. What was it? Women in Science and Technology. And it was some organization of women called the Society for Canadian Women in Science and Technology that had been formed 1 year or 2 before. And I thought, this sounded good. This sounded really good. So I went to the conference, joined, and it was like a tiny bud of hope in me blossoming into this gorgeous flower. And I realized it was just this bouquet of intelligent, capable women doing interesting things. And I became so much more enthused for my career as a science communicator. And also, it helped to be able to further the goals. I loved giving. I loved learning. And like one woman said, we have certain muscles that only relax when we're around other women in science. We were a rare breed in those days. If there was a woman in the department who wasn't office support, she was the only one in the whole department, often in the whole floor of a big building. And so it was great to be able to consciously promote women in science and tech, but it was also a great way to get stories. I could say what's happening in your department and get a précis of what everyone was doing in a whole field at UBC, SFU, wherever. And in those days, most of the women in STEM were university-based. They were academics. My contributions to SCWIST. Well, I've been on the board in the early days when it was hard to get women to be on the board because we were all very busy and there were so few women in STEM. You had to beg, borrow, and persuade to get people on. I actually came back from my honeymoon and I'd been away a couple of months to increasingly urgent voicemail messages saying, we've had our AGM and you were elected head of the science community or the communication department. Please call me, we have something coming up. And they got more and more urgent. So I came home to these and I'd been elected in absentia without even knowing I was running. And I helped with the communications in the early days before we had social media. Also, I've given workshops, how to talk to the media, Canadian culture, because I work as a Canadian culture coach. I would work with IWIS to talk to them about things that are these unwritten rules of Canadian culture. If you're invited to lunch for a job interview, the biggest thing you have to remember is to not let people see food in your mouth, because in Canadian culture, that's gross. Just as in Japan, you wouldn't blow your nose in public, because in Japan, that's gross. And all the things about learning to live and work in a new country. Because I've seen SCWIST since day one has promoted women who are immigrants, who are refugees, who've had the courage to leave where they lived and make a whole new life here. Our early presidents, you can look at the list, and many of them were immigrants. It's just a natural part of living in this country if you're not Indigenous. So yeah, workshops, learning, going to things, helping to organize things. I was on the nominating committee one year. Just what a normal member would do. For women in STEM, for girls just STEM curious or with goals in STEM, I'd say do it. Go for it. Nothing you learn is wasted. You're putting all of this into your palette of skills and experiences, be they official credit courses or networking or just getting to know interesting women. These will all be things that support you, that give you options in the future, and will help you see what's possible, because it's very hard to aim for a goal you can't see. I think the biggest lesson I've learned by belonging to SCWIST and participating is that we're stronger together. If we build each other up, we all rise. What is it? A rising tide floats all boats. And the other I learned is I don't grow when I make you smaller. Working together, supporting ourselves, bringing in what would otherwise be outsiders because they're too young, their accent is too strong, they don't look professional, whatever it is, bringing people in. I love the old Pete Hine poem. To paraphrase it, they drew a circle that shut me out. So I drew a bigger one that brought us all together. And I think that's the strength of SCWIST, is when we support each other in our differences and our commonality, we achieve amazing things. Even in my darkest days, when I was home full-time with a child and overwhelmed with juggling everything that childcare and elder care, which actually took more mental and physical energy and time, SCWIST was a beacon for me. It offered me affirmation that I was more than just a carer, because for me, that wasn't enough. And it gave me a chance to give back and say, yes, I have things of value and skill. And now that I'm back on track, that my time as a carer has diminished, I can relish and enjoy all that these intelligent, capable, and talented women have to offer. And my hope for SCWIST in the future is this early days of coming together, of mutual support, and of reaching out to look for others who need help, who need support, will only grow, that it will get stronger. And when it gets stronger, we get stronger.